Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. Today I'm going to be talking about Strange Tales issue number 3. I wanted to go ahead and get all these reviewed that I've actually been keeping an eye on and stuff, even though I'm trying to get some other stuff read at the current moment, trying to watch some other stuff to put up here on the channel, as things like Goosebumps stuff to talk about for Halloween time and fall and all that crazy stuff. I have so much content coming out right now, man. It's like back in summertime when I had so much stuff coming out. But anyway, Strange Tales issue number 3. This is not my favorite. So far, I think my favorite might be issue 2. Possibly because that was such a good issue. There were so many good things in issue 2. I'm trying to get the first story to come up, but apparently my Kindle just decided to stop working. Okay, the first story I really like. I think it's a really good story. It's called The Shadow. Basically, a man that is kind of talking to a girl. Another guy that likes the same girl punches him, knocks him down the road, and the man happens to notice when he wakes back up that his shadow, like, disconnects from him. Like, you know when you walk around in the sun, like let's say you're in your downtown area, right? And the sun's beaming down on the street and your shadow is like right behind you, right? It's like connected to your feet. For some reason his shadow is like disbanded from him and it starts running away, right? And he chases the shadow, and where it ends up leading him to, when he finds out what's going on and whatnot, it's pretty awesome. It was a really cool story. I didn't expect it to end the way it did. It might be a little predictable to most people, but I actually was surprised by the way it went. I didn't expect that, because again, Strange Tales to me comes across as more of a kids book series, because this was at a time where comics were aimed more for kids and younger readers. They didn't have cursing or gore or anything like that in these. So it's kind of surprising to me to see where they went with the finale of the story. I thought it was pretty neat. I enjoyed it a lot. If I had to rate The Shadow on a 5-star basis for this anthology, what is an anthology? For an anthology series, I would say this is a pretty good solid story, even though it's like a 5 or 6 page long comic strip. I'd give it like a 5 out of 5. I really like the story a lot. I think it's pretty neat. Pretty enjoyable. The next story is called The Man Who Never Was, which this story has been done to death, whether it be on Twilight Zone or probably in Tales from the Crypt at some point. This story is not the most original thing. I mean, it's okay, the way Tales has told it, but I personally think we've seen it done better in other places. Basically, two guys, well, there's mainly one guy, he gets a phone call from a childhood friend who wants to come and talk to him, and they sit down and they talk, and he starts showing him like a photograph that has, you know, like 2 people in it now, and there used to be a third person. The third person has gone missing, and he like disappears and doesn't exist. When the friend that's in a panic talks to the main character, he talks about how he went and found other people that the guy was married to and like his family and stuff. None of them even know about the person even existing. The guy's just disappeared off the face of the earth. Nobody knows what happened. You've heard the story 1,000 times. You probably know the ending before you've even had to read the book itself, if you're gonna read this, that is. Really bland. And I guess it's possible that this was fresh back in the day when it came out. But the way it's told, it's not really that special in my opinion. Even for, compared to most Strange Tale stories, I don't even think it's that well executed or that well done. Whether it be the art or anything, it's not super special. The art, to me, isn't as good here as it was in issue 2. I thought I'd just mention that. Even though there's different artists that work on these comics and stuff, these stories. The Man That Never Was, it's okay. It's a 2 out of 5 for me. And it's just because it hasn't aged well. It's been ripped off so many times, or that it itself might be a rip-off for all I know. But it hasn't aged well, in my opinion. It's one of the lamer stories. 2 out of 5, like I said. Not really that great. The next story I really liked. It's one of the written stories. They actually fixed what I talked about in the last issue, where they actually have the next page and final page here immediately after the first page of the story. But this one is called Trapped in the Cave of Horror. This is pretty neat. Basically, a guy who's like a private detective, he and his wife go on like a little bit of a vacation type thing. And one of the places that they're looking at is kind of an attraction of a cave of horrors, where apparently, and they have a tour guide by the way too, I think he's Spanish or something, I don't really know. I think he speaks Spanish. I think the story even opens up with the word "sí, señor," or something like that. They find out this legend about how there's some kind of mysterious ghost, demon, spirit, false god type thing wandering around inside of this cave that carves faces. It's called the Artist. Well, there's a person called the Artist that worships a false god type thing. But this artist goes up and he studies your face, even as a ghost now, and he carves it into the wall, right? In the stone or whatever on the wall, the cave walls. And then something terrible will happen to the person. Probably they'll just die. And that's kind of the story here, the kind of idea for what could happen. And the way it plays out, the way it's written, it feels like an H.P. Lovecraft modern day story, at least for 1951. And it's fantastic. I couldn't recommend Strange Tales issue 3 enough for that story alone. 2 pages long, it's fantastic. I think you'll get a ride of your life out of it. Really, really cool time. A little slow. For 2 pages, I'm not going to complain though, it's not really that big of a deal. But Trapped in the Cave of Horror, or Horrors, whatever the title is, I'd give that on a 5-star basis. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Pretty good story. Really, really dug it. The next story I wasn't super crazy about. It's called Invisible Death. And you can't really see anything here, but I guess it's kind of the point, isn't it? Because of the word invisible in the title. But it's kind of like these space beasts that are invisible to the human eye. They start attacking the world and basically cause everything to get blown up. Like a nuclear war sets off on the Earth. Like the Americans blame the Russians blame the Americans. It kind of goes like that. Everybody's shooting nukes at each other and stuff. Everybody's being shot at from the skies by these invisible space beast things. Some kind of alien type thing. This is where it gets real ridiculous, right? The main character is a blind guy. He's a scientist and stuff. And his assistant is blind too. The blind guy hired a blind assistant. We talk about the blind leading the blind. This is the blind giving the wages to the other blind. You know, this is just... I don't like the story almost at all. I really don't. The art's pretty great here. It might even be the best art in this particular issue. But it gets real sci-fi and real weird. I still don't like the finale. I don't like really anything about the story, honestly. It's one of, in my opinion, one of the worst. It's one of the most developed. It takes a lot of space. I mean, I think it's one of the longer stories I've read out of the first 3 or so issues. Maybe out of the first 5 that I've read in total. I think this is one of the longer stories. About 8 or 10 pages long. I don't think it deserves it. It's really not that great. Especially compared to things like The Egg from the last issue. This ain't nothing on that. If you're a big sci-fi person, maybe you'll enjoy this more. It has kind of like that 1950s adventure type story. Like, you know how you'd read like a Nancy Drew book just because you wanted a mystery book, right? This is what that felt like. It felt like if you like sci-fi from the 50s, you're going to enjoy this more than likely. I'm a big sci-fi fan from the 50s. I didn't like it all that much. So it might say something about me, it might say something about the genre at the time, or anything compared to how it is now. I don't know, the story sucks in my opinion. Invisible Death, if I had to give that story a rating on a 5-star basis, it'd be like a 1 out of 5. I don't like it, I hate it. I would love to hear other people's opinions on that story. If you have an opinion on that, please put that down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Yeah, I really like some Strange Tales. The next story is called The Madman. It's the next to last story. It's actually only like 2 pages long. The story's not that great either. It's kind of interesting, but not really, you know? Basically a man that's kind of like just a redneck guy. He hears a horrible noise, like a man screaming in one of the apartments, or whatever it is. I don't know. I guess it's an apartment. It says 3A, so I'm assuming it's an apartment. A man starts screaming there. It's an older gentleman who does like scientific experiments and stuff. And the main character guy, the redneck man, walks in there, busts the door down, walks in there, and talks to the man. The man talks about how there's a poltergeist inside of the room in one of the corners. And that's all I'm going to tell you, because it's 2 pages. I've already told you 75% of the story. The finale is stupid. You know, I was very interested in this. This story is 2 pages long. A lot of it has to do with that last story, Invisible Death, being so freaking long. They cut out time to develop this story or do something better with this story. For the constraints they had, this story is whatever. I don't like it that much. I think The Madman isn't all that great. Of course, the reason it's called The Madman is because the main character is accusing the scientific experimental guy a madman because of him saying that he sees a poltergeist in the room and there is nothing there. The ending doesn't make any sense to me at all. I still can't figure out exactly what it's supposed to be or what's supposed to be happening there, even though it's kind of blatant what they're saying, but it doesn't make any sense to me in my head. You know, I can't tell you more because I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's really stupid. I don't like the Madman story either. If I had to rate this on a 5-star basis, it'd be a 1 out of 5. It's so underdeveloped and so just dumb and lazy. Again, it feels like a placeholder just to fill up 2 more pages of the book. It's not good. It has some decent art, but it ain't that good. The last story in this book is called Voodoo. And Voodoo is a pretty decent story. I actually really dug this story. Again, one of the longer ones. Basically, a man and wife go on a vacation, and the wife is very ungrateful. You know, it has kind of one of those moral messages about appreciating what you have and the loved ones you have. on both ends, whether it be with the wife or the husband, who eventually kind of talks to a guy that he becomes friends with and wants him to make a voodoo doll to try to be able to kill his wife, right? He wants the man to do it, not the main character himself wants to do it. But he almost wants that guy that he's become friends with to kill his wife as a voodoo doll or whatever. And some stuff happens that really surprised me that actually made the story so great. This is one of the best ones I've read in all of Strange Tales so far. I really, really like this one. Very wild plot twist, the kind of stuff that R.L. Stine would come up with. If you're a big Goosebumps fan, Voodoo is going to be a really big story for you to read, I think, personally. I think you'll like this a lot. Really fun time. I like the story a lot. I don't want to tell you too much about it. The art is not good, really. I don't think so. If I had to rate this particular story, Voodoo, on a 5-star basis, I'd probably give it about a 4 out of 5. Pretty good story. I really liked it a lot, especially the moral to the whole thing about appreciating what you have, and who you have, for that matter. You don't know who's going to be gone when, but really good story. That wasn't a spoiler either. That was just something I tagged onto there. But anyway, that is my thoughts on... I'm trying to make sure I'm getting all the stories talked about here. Yeah. That's my thoughts on Strange Tales issue number 3, guys. What are your thoughts? And put them down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Again, I think my personal favorite story in here might be The Shadow. I think it's a pretty great one, honestly. What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear what you have to say down below. If I had to rate the whole book, this whole issue, overall, on a 5-star basis in this Volume 1 collection thing of Strange Tales, I'd probably give this particular volume probably a 3 out of 5. And it's kind of a low 3 out of 5, because like I said, there's only like 2 or 3 stories in this entire issue that are actually really good. But again, that's the cool thing with anthology horror. You can have the stuff that I don't really consider all that great, but the stuff that I absolutely love all the time. And all of these issues could have at least one story that I love, you know? So this is pretty cool. I recommend it. If you guys haven't read Strange Tales before, it's pretty neat. Again, issue 2, really, really good. This whole Volume 1 collection I have is the first 10 issues of the comic series, and I like it a lot, even though it came out of the 50s. Kind of silly and cheesy, goofy storylines and artworks and the way they're written and everything. The execution of the stories is kind of silly. But I like sci-fi and horror and all that, thrillers, drama, all that stuff. I like all that stuff. I think it's cool how you have all that compacted here, kind of like with the Twilight Zone and stuff. So if that's up your alley, I recommend it. It's pretty cool. Anyway, thank you for watching. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today, and goodbye.